Alright, so this is the return of weekly decks. It's same old really. We're just going over what decks. I'm not too sure what's changed and what hasn't changed. It's been a while and I'm not sure which decks I actually have changed, so I'm just gonna go over every character. I think on a more regular basis I'll probably just cover like which ones I've actually changed, but in this case I probably changed quite a few of them, so I'm just gonna go over all of them. What legendary cards are more relevant right now, and what loadouts you should be using with those, at least in my opinion, with those legendary cards. So I guess we'll just start with Willow since she's at the start. In my opinion, Willow should always use Blast Flower. Like Scorched Earth and Scorn are both viable options, but their Scorn is too inconsistent. Like you're landing the Q is not consistent enough, you're not going to get the big damage from it all the time, and when you do land the Q, you get so much damage at base anyways that you don't really need Scorn to begin with. Like if you land your Q on an Androxus or an Evie or something, you're going to kill them anyways without Scorn. So I prefer not using Scorn, I think it's too inconsistent. And as for Scorched Earth, you just lose so much damage. It's definitely an option, but you lose so much damage and so much just general viability by taking this card. If you have a specific pocket strat with it, or if you have a lot of damage elsewhere that you can rely on, then maybe it's an option, but besides that, if we're just talking like solo queue, ranked or casuals, I would say always Blast Flower. Like you need the consistent left click damage. With that, this is like my main go-to build, just giving you some cooldown reduction on the F, giving you some extra HP. This can change kind of however you want though. If you want some more right-click oriented build, you can use either of the two right-click cards. I think Sparkle is higher priority than Twilight. Sparkle allows you to just zone out an area for a longer time, which is pretty important. And if we're talking about point fights, then having Sparkle is definitely pretty solid. The issue with it is that people tend to get out of the zone, out of the dead zone anyways, so having the extra duration on it isn't too relevant. So that's why, generally speaking, I just go with the extra HP and go with the cooldown on the Flutter. It's my preference, at least. And then reducing the cooldown on the Seedling is always nice. By 1 second, doesn't really make too much difference, but you may as well since you already have extra HP. And then just 1 ammo for both your Q and your F is always nice as well. With Androxus, not too much has changed on my part. I think Godslayer, some people are starting to consider Godslayer as a more viable option, but I still think Darkstalker is the best option. It just allows you to be so aggressive and just run around and do whatever you want. I'd always prefer Darkstalker, and I will continue to prefer it unless they change something, I think. As for loadouts, same old loadout. Abyss Walker 4, Seething Hatred 4, and then Power of the Abyss 2. Again, Power of the Abyss 2 is just it's the perfect level 2 card right now. It guarantees you 2 dashes when you hit your reversal, which is quite nice for a level 2 card, so I would go with this build in most scenarios. Barik's changed a little bit. It's kind of like 50-50 between Architectonics and Fortify right now. It depends entirely about on team comp, on map, on so many different things, so it's kind of a judgment call if you go Architectonics or Fortify. If you're a more veteran Barik player, you'll know in most situations which to go. I generally prefer Architectonics just because it allows you to do damage, which is a pretty crucial factor in casuals and in ranked play, whereas the shield build kind of limits you in what you can do. Loadout wise, you can mix this up, he has a lot of options. For turret build, this is kind of my preferred build, just Healing Station, Forged Alloy, Field Deploy, Foundation, and Combat Repair. If anything, you could drop Healing Station a bit if you have a consistent healer. Like if you're playing with a Seris or a Snake, you could drop this down as it's not as relevant and get a little bit more duration on your barricade, or potentially lower the cooldown with Palisade instead. A little bit of personal preference, it's whatever you want really. But yeah, some build, Forged Alloy is definitely core, Field Deploy is definitely core, and then Healing Station, Foundation, and Palisade you can mix up depending on the team comp. Optimally, you'd set up multiple builds for it. As for Foundation, it's just commit to the shields, get your Foundation, get your Palisade, and then the rest of the cards you can split again based on personal preference, based on team comps and stuff like that. So again, I'd recommend setting up multiple builds depending on what you're up against and what you're playing with. Bomb King's still pretty much the same, Accelerant's still the only real option. Chain Reaction and Demolition are never really worth it. I still use the same build. Bomb King again is still like heavy personal preference in regards to loadouts. You can use pretty much whatever you want. I've been using this build for the most part. I like King's New Cloak, having some extra HP. A lot of people prefer King's Court over King's New Cloak and Backdraft, but I prefer King's New Cloak as it's a bit more consistent, and I like Backdraft because I prefer having mobility over healing, because most games I play I'm always going to have a healer anyways. So that's a little bit of personal preference, and you can flex it up a little bit. Air Blast is definitely core, and some health related card is core, either King's Court or King's New Cloak, your call, and then Backdraft if you want it. Buck still the same. Bounce House is the core. As for loadouts, it's still kind of the same. This is your general deck. Vigor, Reconstruction, and Deep Breath are all flexible, and Leg Day can be flexed between level 3, like level 2, level 3, level 4. But Vigor, Reconstruction, and Deep Breath, all of these can be changed out to your preference. If you want Lifesteal, then go for it. I just like this because it's very snowbally. If you get one kill, then it can really you can really snowball the fight with it, which is what Buck's extremely good at to begin with. So just this is my preferred. If you want Lifesteal, go for it. Cassie, still the same. Actually, I think the last time we mentioned Big Game was falling off a little bit and there's much more Exaction. I think even more so now. Exaction is like 99% of scenarios you're going to have Exaction. It's so much better than Big Game right now, just because the tanks always have shields, and the high HP targets always have a way to avoid your disengaged damage anyways. So I'd say Exaction in pretty much every scenario. As for loadouts, Incitement 4 is core, Onslaught is core, Lunge is core. It's just a matter of if you want Lunge 2, Lunge 3, potentially Lunge 1 if you're on a smaller map or something, and then Onslaught changes depending on the rest of your loadout. Higher Lunge means lower Onslaught, and vice versa. Somersault is not mandatory. You can have it or you cannot. It's up to you. If you find the value in it, then grab it. If you don't, then you don't have to have it. You can get something else instead. Oops. Wrong button. Drogoz is a bit interesting now. Combustible and Fusillade are both viable options in my opinion. Fusillade is the easier to learn, easier and more consistent option. If you're starting to get a hang of Drogoz, you can rock Combustible instead. It takes a little bit of getting used to run Combustible, but it's definitely a perfectly fine option. Fusillades, again, the more consistent, the more easy to learn option, I guess. So if you're trying to get into playing Drogoz, use Fusillade. As for the loadouts, I haven't quite decided on what I want. I don't really like running Masterful anymore, so I tend to go with a build more like this. I do change it very regularly though, like every time I play Drogoz I tend to change it up a little bit. Lung Capacity 1 is going to be the same in every build, you're always going to have that. Propel 3 or 4 is always going to be there. And Survival is pretty much always going to be there. Thrill of the Hunt, you can use Thrill of the Hunt if you want, that's personal preference. I prefer just having fuel so I can stay in the air, so I like altitude and fuel tank. But it's up to you. You can also swap this out for Masterful if you want. If you're using Combustible, you should definitely have Masterful. I'd recommend swapping out altitude. So you'd have Masterful like level 3 or potentially level 4. Level 3 is usually enough, I guess. Masterful isn't that great after the nerfs anyways, so it's a little bit of personal preference, but Lung Capacity, Propel are core, Survival 2 is core, and then Masterful if you're using Combustible. If you're using Fusillade, you're flexible in these last two cards. Evie, I still prefer Wormhole in every scenario, but learning how to play with both Wormhole and Reprieve are good options. Like, you should be able to know both, really. You should be able to learn both. It's not too hard, and having two different playstyles on Evie is always good. That way you can change it up depending on team comp. Soar build is always just bad right now. I've seen some decent plays with it. I know there's a player called Runna, and he's very good with the Soar build, but that's more like an oddball out. I'd say stick to Wormhole and Reprieve. Either or is fine. Like, if you feel like you get more value with Reprieve, then use Reprieve. If you feel like you get more value with Wormhole, use Wormhole. With Wormhole build, you'll have a build sort of like this: Teleport 4 core, Flicker 4 core. The rest of the cards are pretty flexible. You can use Cold-Blooded if you want. You can use any 3 cards here, really. These are all personal preference. As for Ice Block build, I like something like this, with Cold-Blooded 4, Teleport 4, and then kind of the same cards that I had before on the other build as well. What you can do is you can drop Teleport to like level 3 and get, which card is it? Frigid Field. So say replace Swift Witch with Frigid Field. That way you have some damage reduction when your Ice Block ends, so it's easier to get out. Definitely a viable option. It's a little bit of personal preference, how deep you want to go, how you want to play it. On a bigger map you probably want Teleport 4 anyways, but if you're on a smaller map like Frog Isle, you can probably get away with having Teleport 3, and then you can have Frigid Field at a higher level, which is probably worth it. Fernando's like a mix. More often than not you're going to be using Aegis, but you can definitely get away with using Scorch in some scenarios. It just comes down to the team comp. If they have a lot of shield killers anyways, then you might want to go with Scorch, because they're killing your shield anyways. If they have a Drogoz and a Sha Lin, you're not going to be able to have your shield up anyway, so might as well go damage. It also depends if you're playing with another tank or not. If you're playing with another tank, then maybe you want Scorch. If you're playing a solo tank, maybe Aegis. And with those it's kind of the same. You can go a shield-oriented build like this with Aegis. It's kind of, so here's how it works. It's if you have Scorch, you can play, you play Fireball build. Like you should be playing Fireball build with Scorch. If you're playing with the shield build, you can play either of these, like the Fireball Chase build with Aegis, or the like straight up shield-oriented build with Aegis. Either or. So with Scorch, run the Fireball build. With Shield, run the Fireball build or the Shield build. That's basically how it works. Grohk, only viable option is still Maelstrom, I think. Wraith is completely out of the question. Totemic Ward is kind of like a super weird pocket strat kind of thing. I don't see it working in any scenarios. In a casual, maybe, but it's something that takes a lot of coordination if you want to pull off properly. So I'd say just Maelstrom every single time. As for loadouts, still pretty much the same. Just go full on right click. If you want more of a mixed build, then you can rock something sort of like this, with some Gale, with some Haunting, maybe some Monolith Totem. Oh, actually, I need to change this because you shouldn't have Thunderstruck anymore. What you should do is you take out Thunderstruck and just get Gale here, or put Haunting at a higher level, because they recently changed how Thunderstruck works due to how the right-click legendary is formatted now. So I wouldn't recommend using Thunderstruck anymore. Just get Gale, a build similar to this, maybe Gale at level 3, Haunting level 2. Take away Astral Walker if you don't feel like you need it. There's a little bit of flexibility there. You don't really need the Thunderstruck anymore. But I'd still definitely say Arc Lightning. Potentially you can drop it to level 3 or level 2, but I prefer like this. Grover, you're still using Deep Roots in most scenarios. Ferocity, I mean, if you really want to do damage for whatever reason, then you can get it. But Deep Roots, like, if we're talking, you're picking Grover for the sole reason of having the root, which is 99% of the situations that you're picking Grover, then you should have Deep Roots, obviously. And then with that, you would have Chop Down level 4, and then you have a very flexible build where you can get healing related cards basically. I like having Heavenly Agility 1, Vine Grasp 2, potentially Vine Grasp 1 if you need some other points and other cards, but I like having these two in any deck I make, and then these two cards are more flexible. You can have range on healing, you can have damage reduction on healing, you can have movement speed on healing. Basically whatever you want, whatever your comp is, however it fits your playstyle. That's what these two cards here are for. Inara, I still think Inara's bad in most situations, but honestly speaking, she has pretty decent options legendary-wise. She can kind of use any of them. It's all for different scenarios. Generally speaking, the wall isn't going to be that great besides on like Jaguar Falls, maybe Ice Mines, maybe Frog Isle in some scenarios. So this is probably like the weaker one. The cripple is kind of hard to find value from unless you're against certain comps. Against certain comps, this is definitely a really valuable card, but probably more often than not you're going to go with damage reduction just to stay alive more. It kind of depends on your team comp and their team comp. If you have another tank, you might not need the damage reduction as much, which means you can go with the wall or the cripple. If you're playing against characters that are really reliant on movement, then cripple can definitely be more valuable. So I mean, it's flexible. Well, for Frogile, for instance, like if you're playing against a Sha Lin and a Cassie, and like characters that don't have a lot of mobility, then you can easily just block off one area, so they're forced to go into another area. That would be one example of how you could use the wall very well on Frogile. You're forcing them to peek in a different area. So if you have a Makoa with the Inara, then you block off an area, they have to go to another, Makoa's waiting there. It takes a lot of coordination, but it's definitely possible. I only have one build set up for Inara. It's just kind of like a generic, you have a little bit of everything build. I'm sure you could change these builds, like depending on what you're doing. If you're going with entirely damage reduction build, you could take away a little bit of the Warden's Field and lower the cooldown on something else, or get more value from towards the damage reduction. But this is this is the do-it-all build. This is the jack of all trades build. You have cooldown and everything. You have some max HP. Your wall has a little bit more HP, which it's not too relevant, but. And then your wall has a little bit more duration. It's very much a do-it-all build. Not great, and it's kind of like Pip, It's like he does a little bit of everything, just like this build does a little bit of everything. Kinessa, I still like my own build. Doesn't really matter what card you're using. I still like my build. I mean, it's the same build I've been using forever. You can. If you really want, you can change out any of these 4 cards, really. I wouldn't recommend changing out Quickscope, maybe. Quickscope and Restore are a bit higher priority, but you can really change out any of these 4 cards for other options, Beam Me Up or Bob and Weave, whatever you feel like works best for you, you can change these up. As for Legendary card, I prefer having Eagle Eye in pretty much every scenario. Steady aim is perfectly viable, but it means you have to stand still a lot more, which isn't fantastic. In a higher end competitive setting, then it's going to be very hard to stand still a lot, so being consistent with steady aim is definitely difficult. Suppression, I mean, there's a couple scenarios, especially in a mobility meta, where this could be useful, but generally speaking, when you're arguing okay, well, it's good against a buck who's going to jump in, get slowed, makes it easier to shoot him, I'd rather have Eagle Eye for a chance to one-shot him, basically. So I always prefer Eagle Eye, but steady aim is an option if you don't have a lot of pressure on you. Suppression is an option if you really want to slow people. That's about it. Lex, I still think he only has one option. He has Death Hastens. I really like the idea of heroism still. It hasn't been touched since it was released, and it can definitely be a good option. It's just a lot harder to pull off properly. It's difficult to manage this properly. Death Hastens is the more easy option, the more consistent option as well. Loadout wise, I think it's the same loadout for me for every build, or for every legendary card. Fortitude for the healing, Condition for movement speed, and then some Commencement for distance on the slide. Besides that, these 2 cards can be whatever. Keep in mind that Keen Sight is still bugged, I think, so wouldn't recommend it. But yeah, Fortitude, Heal, Conditions, Movement Speed, that's kind of the core of the build. Maeve is pretty weak right now, but in my opinion there's only one option, and that's Artful Dodger. Having the heal is pretty damn important, and just being able to reset. You're going to be using your Q a lot, while the eliminations, resetting cooldown and pounce, it has potential, but I would always prefer having a little bit of healing. It's really strong early game, which is when you need to snowball early game with Maeve, otherwise you're just gonna get shit on. You need to make sure you're shutting them up early. So I'd prefer having Artful Dodger, get heals early, make sure to snowball the game with my Q, being able to stay alive basically. Because if you get shot at and you have Rogue's Gambit, you're just dead 100% of the time. Whereas at least this provides a little bit of potential survivability. Plus, if you're going against a cripple or something like that, then it can be nice to have this. It's a little bonus. As for loadouts, I still use the same one, literally the exact same build as before. Savagery 4, Walk It Off 4, Street Cred 2, Street Runner 1, and Chase 1. It's legit, it's healing on the right click, healing in the F, max HP, and then 2 just whatever cards. Makoa's changed a lot back and forth. He changed to half shell with Berry Reef. That was kind of the meta. Now he's kind of changed back to pluck with Berry Reef or not Berry Reef. Like, there's a lot of flexibility with Makoa right now. You can use basically either half shell or pluck. I prefer having pluck. I use this build. This is kind of like my default deck for honestly either half shell or pluck. What you can do is you can drop down strong arm by 2 levels, so it's only 1 second cooldown, and get more healing. But this is kind of just like my default deck. The main change here you're gonna see is Berry Reef. Either have Berry Reef at level 4 or have no Berry Reef at all. That's the big difference you're gonna see in Makoa decks right now. If you don't want Berry Reef, then you commit more to the hook, get some damage reduction. Like, you can do anything really. But that's the main change basically. Either Berry Reef 4 or no Berry Reef at all. That's personal preference. Give it a try, see what you think about Berry Reef. Especially in casuals and ranked, people are going to shoot your shield, so you definitely get a lot of value from Berry Reef. Whereas in competitive play, people are more disciplined, I guess, and they won't shoot the shield, so you might have long cooldowns. Snake. Rape and Gourd is going to be your option in most scenarios. Spirit's Chosen is an option. It's not particularly consistent because it's very rare that you're healing the same person over and over again. Like, you have to heal them twice in a row, unfortunately. You can't heal your tank and then heal someone else and then heal the tank again and get your 300 bonus heal. You have to heal like one person at a time if you're going to use this card, which is not optimal for Snake's healing style. You want to like try to keep everyone topped off, always be healing different people, and throw your gourd on your tank. So it's not a great option, but there's definitely some situations where you can say, okay, I can definitely pocket heal someone this game, and then it might be a good choice to go Spirit's Chosen. This is my main loadout, still Eerie Presence. They made it easier to hit the Snake heal, but it's very important that you don't miss it, and the value that you're getting by removing Eerie Presence, like all you're gonna get is like 1 second cooldown off your gourd or a little bit of damage reduction. Like, you really, you're not gaining much by taking away Eerie Presence, so you may as well have it at level 4. That would be my my option in every scenario. I always want Eerie Presence just because I get so little value by taking it to level 0 anyways, so you may as well. Like, it's also so crucial. If you miss that heal and you don't have Eerie Presence, that could cost you a fight. So I just go with Eerie Presence, it's probably worth it. Pip, I still feel like Catalyst is the only option. Some people have played with Mega Potion, like in NA they play some Mega Potion Pip, and some people have been using Acrobatics, but at the end of the day, I still think Catalyst is the best option. It's just way more consistent than either of these two. So Catalyst, in my opinion, with Catalyst, it's the same old build. Side Tanks 4, Gift Giver 4, Smithereens 2. That's your core build. Sprint 1, not necessary, but it allows you to get up in certain places that you can't otherwise. Medicinal Excellence is just like a bonus card. But definitely Side Tanks 4, Gift Giver 4, that's your big, those are your two big core cards. Ruckus has option between Aerial Assault and Flux Generator. You can kind of switch it up. It depends on the map, depends on the team comp. On a map with a lot of high grounds, Aerial Assault might be better. Or if you're playing a solo tank, you might want Flux Generator. If you're playing with 2 tanks, then you might want Aerial Assault for a bit more mobility. You can just kind of just mix it up. Either of them are perfectly fine options. Recycler is still useless. I have 2 builds. This one for the dashes. Fuel Reserves is still bugged as far as I know, so while normally I would have this at level 3 and drop some other stuff down, for the time being it's still level 1 just because it doesn't really do anything. There's nothing else that really, it's so unimpactful to replace this anyways, I just have it. From what I've heard, it's sort of bugged where it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work depending on like how your cooldowns are staggered. So having it level 1 is just like, whatever, it might do something for you, it might not. Other than that, it's just healing basically. Opulence 4, Nanotech 3, get some healing on your Q, get some healing on your right click, and then shield cooldown and shield duration to help you out with your healing. If you're going damage reduction, what I do is I drop the healing a bit on the opulence. You can kind of flex this a little bit. I'd actually say drop refraction down to 2, so you have these at level 2 just like the other build. So you can kind of change this up. If you're on a smaller map, maybe you want, here's how I see it. If you're on a smaller map, you're going to have people close to you anyways, so like Jaguar Falls, Ice Mines, and Frog Isle. I would actually go with higher level Metal March then, because it's more likely that people will be in your vicinity, which means it's more likely that you're going to want that extra range just to barely get them in. On a map like Timbermill or Frozen Guard, no one's going to be close to you anyways. Like, there's not going to be anyone nearby, so having this at level 1 or level 3 isn't going to make any difference anyways. So I just drop that or take it away entirely and get more healing instead. But on a smaller map, Frog Isle, Jaguar Falls, Ice Mines, I'd say get this at a higher level just to make sure you're getting the edges. Like, you really want to get these people that are just at the edge of it in as much as possible, so then you can increase it. Seris hasn't been in previously, but she only really has one build. She has Mortal Reach, that's her only option in every scenario. Agony and Soul Collector they're cute cards. Like, they have a little bit of potential, but they're just nothing compared to Mortal Reach right now. It's not even the range on Mortal Reach, it's just the 1 second more healing is so influential, especially in a Cauterize filled meta. Then having that 1 second is going to be very impactful. With it, it's only really one build. It's cooldown reduction on the right click, Blood Pack so you get some personal healing, Veil 3 so you can get out of trouble quicker, and then 2 flex cards. I like having Dark Whisper for some movement speed and Spirit Leech for some extra ammo, you know, why not? But yeah, it's really only one deck for her right now. One card option, one deck option right now. As I said, the other options are cute, but not really viable. Sha Lin, I like using Desert Shadow in every scenario. Recurve, Recurve, if you're playing against a lot of tanks, then maybe you want to go with Recurve. But that's a very rare scenario if you're playing against like 3 tanks. That's very rarely going to happen. And aside from that situation, I always prefer Desert Shadow. I like the mobility, being able to sneak around, being able to get cheeky stuns off. And when doing that, I use this build. Mirage 4, obviously, get more stealth, which is always nice. Get some movement speed with Wanderlust, get some healing with Grounded. This would be the flexible card here. You don't have to have this. I like having it, but you don't have to have Grounded if you don't want. It's not a necessity. You could replace this with, say, a higher level Swagger. It's a little bit of flexibility there, your choice. I like having Grounded at least. Swagger 1 just for some extra HP. That can actually make a decent difference, especially in casual games if you're fighting Sha Lin against Sha Lin. This can make the difference between 2 shots and 3 shots if they're doing 1k damage, so it's a nice little level 1 card. And so is Impaler Arrow revealing an enemy. Anything that's like revealing for 1 second is always a good level 1 card. Just like, it shows your team like, hey, they're over here, you know? Seeing someone through a wall for 1 second is just a nice little perk. Skye is still trash. Preparation's your option, basically. If we're talking, like, I don't even know, there's just get preparation, get some movement speed so you're annoying. That's about the best thing you can do with Skye, is get preparation so you're annoying, get victory rush so you're annoying, get reload speed so you're annoying, maybe emergency exit. Maybe you could do something like this so you have more stealth. I don't even know, it's just like, your whole goal with picking Skye is just be annoying, because she's not good enough to do anything else. You're just being annoying. Then you may as well go all out, get the victory rush, get the preparation so you're in and out of stealth all the time. Besides that, there's no reason to pick Skye anyways, so you can figure it out. If you really want to play Skye, you can figure out a good build to suit your needs. Torvald, field study is the only option. Just giving your teammates damage is really the only option in my opinion. These are kind of like the Seris. These are kind of cute little options, but they're not really viable. As for the build, which one am I using? I think this is my main build here. The cooldown reduction on the shield is obviously, that's your main goal with Torvald. You're going to be trying to shield as many people as possible all the time, so cooldown reduction is the core of the build. Everything else is flexible. I like having movement speed on the recharge so I can catch up to people. It's kind of like having the movement speed on Fireball with Fernando. just allows you to close the gap a little bit better. And then cooldown reduction on the recharge, especially if you're solo tank, just being able to get your shield back quicker, or more often rather, is pretty important. And then 150 extra base HP is whatever, just a bonus. And recharge is just kind of goes along with the or vital grasp rather, goes along with the conduction a little bit. It's just kind of like, if I could, I would have this at level 0 and have conduction at level 4. But, you know, you have to have a card here, and they kind of do the same thing anyways, so. Tyra actually has some potential with the lifesteal. I think generally speaking, Mercy Kill is the better option. It's the more consistent option, whereas the lifesteal is more like you're pulling off some janky shit kind of thing. Like, you're just trying to make something happen. It's catching them off guard. It's sort of like running Godslayer on Androxus, where they don't expect it, so having that lifesteal could actually change the course of a fight, because they're like, oh, he actually has lifesteal. So it's an option if you want to go with First Blood, then hey, I mean, go for it, right? But Mercy Kill is your more consistent option. With that, I'm running this build now, Survivalist, extra HP. Like, this is straight up just, actually this is this is for both lifesteal and the Mercy Kill. Survivalist, extra HP, Bandolier, so you have the cooldown on the right click. This is basically I'm gonna go in and I'm going to just spam you. Like, I'm gonna be in your face shooting you all the time. Extra HP, right click, extra ammo, just go in their face and be a Tyra. Especially if you're running the lifesteal build, having the extra HP and the extra ammo can be really helpful. But it also suits the right click build with the nade launcher cooldown. Where are we at? Viktor. Honestly, Viktor has some potential with Firefight right now. Gunnery has been his go-to card in the past, but Firefight, we've seen a little bit more of it in competitive play, and I could definitely see it being an option in the current meta, where it's a lot about mobility, getting in and out of fights. It's a lot of burst damage, that's for sure. If you can get up in their face, it kind of serves the same purpose as Tyra, like get in your face, I'm just going to hip fire you, and I'm going to do a shit ton of damage. And it's definitely really good for that, so with that, I have two different builds for Viktor. This is like my default deck. Like, I'm going to stand at range and I'm just going to spam you down with Gunnery. Then I like to have Grenadier 4 so I can keep spamming grenades. It's like long range build, keep spamming, always there, always being annoying, kind of like a Pip would. And then Predator so you can see them through walls. Compensator for the recoil, firing stance so you have some mobility. If you're going to run more hipfire oriented build, do I not? This might actually, I think I have this build on my Smurf. It's something more like this. You don't really have to have Grenadier at as high of a level. You can have it 2 or 3. You're not going to be using it as often because you're going to be more in their face with the hipfire build. So having the cooldown is good, but not as necessary. You're not spamming as much. Whereas having XL Mag can be pretty nice, having some extra ammo. It can be the difference between finishing off a kill and not. Flak Jacket gives you some extra HP, some more survivability, just like with the Tyra. And then second one in Scramble just allow you to run around and be even faster, even more annoying. That's kind of why you have these two. So that's kind of the difference between a more spammy gunnery build and a more in-your-face, I'm going to just hip-fire you build. Last but not least, Ying. Ying only has one option really in my opinion, still just focusing lens. The left click damage is really consistent and it's actually surprisingly high and will allow you to finish off kills that you might not otherwise be able to. Loadout wise, there's still kind of two options. You can either go with Spring Bloom or without. That's your main difference between your two builds, just whether or not you want Spring Bloom. On a smaller map like Jaguar Falls, your illusions are more likely to die, so Spring Bloom is more important, but you don't need it. Instead, you can have a build more like this, get some extra HP, and just have better illusions basically. So with Spring Bloom you have weaker illusions, but you can spam them a bit more. With this build you have slightly stronger illusions, but you can't spam them as much. So it's basically like bigger map with extra HP, more survivability, stronger illusions, and some range on the illusions. Or smaller map, you have weaker illusions, but you can keep spamming them over and over and over again. Yeah, that's about it. That's your weekly decks for OB 49 week something. I have no idea.